The slap echoed through the diner like a gunshot, sharp and ugly, freezing every spoon in midair and every breath in every chest. An 81-year-old veteran sat stunned in his booth, his weathered face turned slightly to the side, a thin red mark blooming on his cheek as his glasses slid crookedly down his nose. The man who had struck him still stood over the table, chest puffed, jaw tight, drunk on his own power. In that moment, no one in the small roadside diner knew that this single act of cruelty was about to awaken a past soaked in sacrifice, brotherhood, and a loyalty that never dies. And no one knew that within minutes the doors would open and everything would change. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves anymore, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this matter because they remind us who we are supposed to be. The old man's name was Henry Calloway, though most people just called him Hank. He had come into the diner every Thursday morning for the past 7 years, always at the same time, always ordering the same thing: 2 eggs over easy, dry toast, black coffee. He sat alone by the window where the sun warmed his hands that once carried rifles across frozen fields and clenched letters from home like lifelines. His posture was bent now, his spine curved under the weight of time, but there was still something solid about him, something unbreakable that didn't come from muscle or youth. It came from having seen the worst of humanity and still choosing decency. That morning, the diner was busier than usual. Truckers, a few locals, a tired waitress moving between tables with practiced patience. The man who would slap Hank had stumbled in loud and already angry at the world. He was younger, stronger, and carried himself with the careless arrogance of someone who had never been truly tested. He was irritated that Hank's booth was near the window he wanted, irritated that the old man didn't move fast enough when bumped, irritated simply because someone weaker was there. Hank didn't argue. He never did. Years ago, he had learned that not every battle was worth fighting, and at his age, peace mattered more than pride. When the man shoved past him, spilling coffee onto the table, Hank quietly reached for a napkin. That small act of calm restraint seemed to enrage the man further, as if kindness itself were an insult. The slap came next, fast and brutal, delivered not because Hank deserved it, but because the man could. The diner fell into a terrible silence. Some people looked away, pretending not to see. Others froze, trapped between outrage and fear. The waitress gasped but didn't move. Hank didn't raise his hands. He didn't shout. He simply sat there, blinking slowly, his cheek burning, his heart heavy not with pain, but with a deep, familiar sadness. It wasn't the slap that hurt most. It was the reminder of how easily respect disappears when age steals your strength. Hank had survived things that man could never imagine. He had watched friends die beside him in foreign dirt, had carried wounded brothers through smoke and fire, had come home with scars both visible and hidden. After the war, he worked decades with his hands, raised a family, paid his dues to a country he loved even when it forgot him. His wife had passed years earlier. His friends were mostly gone. All he wanted now was a quiet breakfast and the dignity to finish his coffee in peace. As the thug stood there, sneering, something else was happening outside the diner, unseen and unheard by those inside. The low rumble of engines began to roll across the parking lot, distant at first, then growing louder, heavier, like an approaching storm. One by one, motorcycles pulled in, chrome catching the morning light, leather jackets moving with purpose. They lined up, neatly, not in chaos, but in order. The sound alone made a few diners glance nervously toward the windows. The door opened, and the first man stepped inside. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his hair streaked with gray beneath a black bandana. The patch on his vest was unmistakable. Hell's Angels. Then another entered, and another. The air in the diner changed instantly, thick with tension and disbelief. Conversations died completely now. Even the man who had slapped Hank felt something shift, though he didn't yet understand why. The biker who entered last stopped just inside the doorway and looked around the room slowly. His eyes landed on Hank's booth, on the crooked glasses, on the red mark on his father's face. This was Michael Calloway, Hank's son, Michael had lived a hard life, one shaped by the same war stories he heard as a boy, the same lessons about loyalty and brotherhood. He had taken a different road than his father, one paved with asphalt and rebellion, but the core values Hank taught him never left. Respect mattered, family mattered, and you never ever walked away when someone hurt your own. Michael didn't rush. He didn't shout. He walked toward the booth with measured steps, each one echoing louder than any words. The other bikers spread out naturally, filling the space without blocking exits, without making threats. They didn't need to. Their presence alone spoke volumes. Hank finally looked up, recognition softening his tired eyes. Seeing his son there brought a flicker of surprise, then concern. Hank never wanted trouble. He never wanted his past or his pain to spill into anyone else's life. He had spent decades trying to protect Michael from the weight of his own sacrifices. Michael knelt slightly beside the booth, his massive frame lowering so he was eye level with his father. He gently straightened Hank's glasses and checked his cheek with a tenderness that stood in stark contrast to his intimidating appearance. In that quiet moment, the diner witnessed something powerful. Not violence, not revenge, but love. The thug began to back away, suddenly aware that he was no longer the biggest presence in the room. His bravado drained fast, replaced by panic. The room that had felt small before now felt impossibly tight. Every eye was on him. Michael stood and turned slowly toward the man. He didn't touch him. He didn't raise his voice. He simply stood there, the weight of his silence heavier than any threat. The other bikers watched, not eager, not aggressive, but united. It was clear they weren't there to start a fight. They were there to finish a wrong. The manager finally found his voice, fumbling with apologies and explanations, but none of it mattered. What mattered was accountability. What mattered was that an old man had been humiliated, and that humiliation had been seen. The thug mumbled something incoherent, his eyes darting around for an escape that no longer existed. His power was gone, stripped away not by fists, but by the realization that his actions had consequences. Michael placed a hand on the table, leaned in slightly, and made it clear through his presence, alone, that this would not be forgotten. The message was simple and devastating. Respect is not optional, and some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. The man left the diner moments later, stumbling, his head down, chased not by violence, but by shame. The engines outside started again, but no one moved yet. Michael returned to his father's side, helping him stand, steadying him gently. The waitress brought fresh coffee with trembling hands, refusing payment. Other patrons watched with wet eyes, some ashamed for not speaking up sooner, others quietly grateful they had witnessed something rare. A reminder that dignity can be defended, that age does not erase worth, and that love sometimes arrives on roaring engines. Hank sat back down, his hands shaking now, not from fear but from the emotional weight of the moment. He had spent a lifetime protecting others. Today, someone protected him. Michael and the bikers stayed only a few minutes longer. There was no celebration, no speeches, just a shared understanding. Before leaving, Michael squeezed his father's shoulder, a silent promise that he was never alone, no matter how old he became. As the motorcycles pulled away, the diner slowly returned to life, but something had changed. People smiled at Hank. Someone paid for his breakfast. The waitress lingered a little longer at his table. Respect had returned, not loudly but deeply. Hank finished his coffee by the window, the sun warming his face again. The red mark on his cheek would fade, but the reminder would not. Kindness still existed. Loyalty still mattered. And sometimes, when the world shows its ugliest side, love shows up bigger. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment now to like this video and share it with someone who believes in standing up for the vulnerable. And before we end, I have one special request. Please comment the word respect below if you believe every elder deserves dignity, no matter their strength or status. Thank you for being part of this story.